Hello, 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 welcome to my channel. I hope that you and everybody is doing very well tonight. So for tonight's video, I am going to be whispering to you and reading from Aesop's Fables. So, here's the first fable. The tortoise and the hare. The hare one day laughed at the tortoise for his short feet, slowness, and awkwardness. "Though you may be swift as the wind," replied the tortoise good-naturedly, "I can beat you in a race." The hare looked on the challenge as a great joke, but consented to a trial of speed, and the fox was selected to act as umpire and hold the stakes. The rivals started, and the hare, of course, soon left the tortoise far behind. Having reached midway to the goal, he began to play about, nibble the young herbage, and amuse herself in many ways. The day being warm, she even thought she would take a little nap in a shady spot, for she thought that if the tortoise could pass her while she slept, she could easily overtake him before he reached the end. The tortoise, meanwhile, plodded on, unwavering and unresting, straight towards the goal. The hare, having overslept herself, started up from her nap and was surprised to find that the tortoise was nowhere in sight. Off she went at full speed, but on reaching the winning post, found that the tortoise was already there, waiting for her arrival. Slow and steady wins the race. The Fox and the Stork. A fox one day invited a stork to dine with him, and, wishing to be amused at his expense, put the soup which he had for dinner in a large flat dish, so that while he himself could lap it up quite easily, the stork could only dip in the tips of his long bill. Some time after, the stork, bearing his treatment in mind, invited the fox to take dinner with him. He in turn put some minced meat in a long and narrow-necked vessel, into which he could easily put his bill, while the master fox was forced to be content with licking what ran round down the sides of the vessel. The fox then remembered his old trick, and could not but admit that the stork had well paid him out. A joke is often returned with interest. envious bird that you are, I am sure you have no cause to complain. On your neck shine all the colours of the rainbow, and your extended tail gleams like a mass of gems. No living being has every good thing to its own share. The falcon is endowed with swiftness, the eagle strength, the parrot speech, the raven the gift of augury, and the nightingale a melodious note, while you have both size and beauty. Cease then to complain, or the gifts you have shall be taken away. Contentment should be the source of every joy. The two crabs. My dear, called out an old crab to her daughter one day, why do you sidle along in that awkward manner? Why don't you go forward like other people? Well, mother, answered the young crab, it seems to me that I go exactly like you do. Go first and show me how, and I will gladly follow. Example is better than precept. The fox without a tail, without a tail, without a tail, without a tail. A fox was once caught in a trap by his tail, and in order to get away, was forced to leave it behind. Knowing that without a tail he would be a laughingstock for all his fellows, he resolved to try to induce them to part with theirs. So, at the next assembly of foxes, he made a speech on the unprofitableness of tails in general, and the inconvenience of a fox's tail in particular, adding that he had never felt so easy as since he had given up his own. When he sat down, a sly old fellow rose, and waving his long brush with a graceful air, said with a sneer that if, like the last speaker, he had lost his tail, nothing further would have needed to convince him. But till such an accident should happen, he should certainly vote in favour of tails. Guard against those who would wish you to be reduced to their own level. Caesar and the slave. During a visit that Tiberius Caesar paid to one of his country residences, he observed that whenever he walked in the grounds, a certain slave was always a little way ahead of him, busily watering the paths. Turn which way he would, go where he might, there was always the fellow still fussing about with his watering pot. He felt sure that he was making himself thus needlessly officious in the hope of thereby gaining his liberty. In making a slave free, a part of the ceremony consisted in giving him a gentle stroke on one side of the face. Hence, when the man came running up in eager expectation at the call of the emperor, the latter said to him, "I have for a long time observed you meddling where you had nothing to do, and while you might have been better employed elsewhere. You are mistaken if you think I can afford a box on the ear at so low a price as you bid for it. Being busy does not always mean being useful. The Woodcock and the Mallard. A woodcock and a mallard were feeding together in some marshy ground at the tail of a mill pond. "Lord," said the squeamish woodcock, "in what a voracious and beastly manner do you devour all that comes before you? Neither snail, frog, toad, or any kind of filth can escape the fury of your enormous appetite. All alike goes down, without measure and without distinction. What an odious vice is gluttony." "Good lack," replied the mallard, "pray, how came you to be my accuser? And whence has your excessive delicacy a right to censure my plain eating? Is it a crime to fill one's belly, or is it not indeed a virtue rather, to be pleased with the food which nature offers us? Surely I would sooner be charged with gluttony, than with that finical and sickly appetite on which you are so pleased to ground your superiority of taste. What a silly vice is daintiness. Thus, endeavouring to palliate their respective passions, our epicures parted with a mutual contempt. The mallard, hastening to devour some garbage, which was in reality a bait, immediately gorged a hook through mere greediness and oversight, while the woodcock, flying through a glade in order to seek his favourite juices, was entangled in a net spread across it for that purpose, falling each of them thus a sacrifice to their different but equal foibles. A voracious appetite and a fondness for dainties equally distract our attention from more material concerns. The Eagle and the Crow. A crow watched an eagle scoop with a majestic air from a cliff upon a flock of sheep, and carry away a lamb in his talons. The whole thing looked so graceful and so easy that the crow at once proceeded to imitate it, and bouncing upon the back of the largest and fattest ram he could see, he tried to make off with it. He found that he could not move the ram, and his claws got so entangled in the animal's fleece that he could not get away himself. He therefore became an easy prey to the shepherd, who, coming up at the time, caught him, cut his wings, and gave him to his children for a plaything. They came crowding about their father, and asked what a strange bird that was. "Why," said he, "he'll tell you himself that he's an eagle. But you take my word for it, I know him to be a crow." 'Tis folly to attempt what you are unable to perform. The Owl and the Nightingale. A formal, solemn owl had for many years made his habitation in a grove profoundly learned. It happened as he sat one evening, half buried in meditation and half in sleep, that a nightingale, unluckily perching near him, began her melodious lays. He started from his reverie, and with a horrid screech interrupted her song. "Begone," cried he, "thou impertinent minstrel, nor distract with noisy dissonance my sublime contemplations, and know, vain songster, that harmony consists in truth alone, which is gained by laborious study, and not in languishing notes, fit only to soothe the ear of a lovesick maid." "Conceited pedant," returned the nightingale, "whose wisdom lies only in the feathers that muffle up thy unmeaning face. Music is a natural and rational entertainment, and though not adapted to the ears of an owl, has ever been relished and admired by the best formed minds. It is natural for a pedant to despise those arts that polish our manners, and that would extirpate pedantry." The Man and the Lion. A man and a lion once argued together as to which belonged to the nobler race. The man called the attention of the lion to a monument on which was sculptured a man striding over a fallen lion. "That proves nothing at all," said the lion. "If a lion had been the carver, he would have made the lion striding over the man." Men are but sorry witnesses in their own cause. The Fox and the Woodcutter. A fox, having been hunted hard and run a long chase, saw a woodcutter at work and begged him to help him to some hiding place. The man said he might go into his cottage, which was close by. He was no sooner in than the huntsman came up. "Have you seen a fox pass this way?" said they. The woodcutter said no, but pointed at the same time towards the place where the fox lay. The huntsmen did not take the hint, however, and made off again at full speed. The fox, who had seen all that took place through a chink in the wall, thereupon came out, and was walking away without a word. "Why, how now?" said the man. "Haven't you the manners to thank your host before you go?" Yes, said the fox. "If your deeds had been as honest as your words, I would have given you thanks." Sincerity is shown by the heart. The Boys and the Frogs. Some boys, playing near a pond, saw a number of frogs in the water and began to pelt them with stones. They killed several of them, when one of the frogs, lifting his head out of the water, cried out, "Pray stop, my boys. What is sport to you is death to us." There are two sides to every question. The Stag in the Ox Stall. asked him why he came to such a place as that where he would be sure to be taken. The stag replied that he should do well enough if the oxen would not tell of him, and, covering himself in a heap of straw, waited for the night. Several servants and even the overseer himself came and looked round, but saw nothing of the stag, who, as each went away, was ready to jump out of his skin for joy, and warmly thanked the oxen for their silence. The ox, who had spoken first to him, warned him not to be too sure of his escape, and said that, glad as they would all be for him to get away, there was a certain person still to come, whose eyes were a deal sharper than the eyes of anyone who had been there yet. This was the master himself, who, having been dining with a neighbour, looked in on his way home to see that all was right. At a glance he saw the tips of the horns coming through the straw, and whereupon he raised a hue and cry, called all his people together, and made a prize of the stag. The eye of the master does more than all his servants. The man and his 2 wives. In a country where men could have more than one wife, a certain man, whose head was fast becoming white, had 2, one a little older than himself and one much younger. The young wife, being of a gay and lively turn, did not want people to think that she had an old man for a husband, and so used to pull out as many of his white hairs as she could. The old wife, on the other hand, did not wish to seem older than her husband, and so used to pull out the black hairs. This went on until between them both they made the poor man quite bald. No man can belong to 2 parties at once. The Lion and the Fox. A fox entered into partnership with a lion on the pretence of becoming his servant. Each undertook his proper duty in accordance with his own nature and powers. The fox discovered and pointed out the prey. The lion sprang on it and seized it. The fox soon became jealous of the lion carrying off the lion's share, and said that he would no longer find out the prey, but would capture it on his own account. The next day he attempted to snatch a lamb from the fold, but fell himself a prey to the huntsmen and hounds. Do not trust too greatly to your prowess. I hope you enjoyed these Aesop's fables.